Welcome to a somewhat more special video. This is the 50 sub special that was really due to be made. There was a reason why I delayed it a bit, since one of my subjects I'm going to discuss soon was only recently finished. Another thing I want to mention is that it is based on my opinion and as of early September. Future projects could change this list if good enough. Oh yeah, although I will try my best not to spoil much of the storylines, be aware of spoilers ahead. Without further ado, this is my top 3 storylines in Amnesia custom stories. I base my decision on storyline originality, longevity, creativity, and also whether or not it has good plot holes, decision making, character development, multiple endings, and satisfying endings. Number 3. Final Revelations by Krusty Clown. Final Revelations is a long custom story with a long storyline. You play as the character called Lee Hawkins, who is in search for any existing Crusaders who are thought to be long dead. But his grandfather's legacy made him believe that they're still out there, and he found a small lead to a small village in Cyprus. In this village, he stays at a hotel, where he can interact to some really basic level with a couple of employees. He also meets Alma, a secondary character that will accompany you sometimes in the story and who you often talk to. You first scout around the village, looking for clues. When you enter the school, you find a horrible fate Alma had in the past. Lee takes pity on the girl and tries to cheer her up, and so she becomes a secondary character in the story. Eventually, Lee discovers that the so-called Crusaders passed through a secret passageway in the nearby chapel. But what he then finds out about these Crusaders is not what he had expected. The tale is full of twists and turns, deceit and betrayal, but also good and fun moments, and you learn more about the fate and the motives of the Crusaders throughout the custom story. This custom story has a really original and creative story that is really long. There is one big plot hole in the story, which is who are the Crusaders? But also, along the line, several smaller plot holes, like why had Alma such a terrible past, and what are the motives of the Crusaders? The interesting thing about this custom story is that which made it on this list, is that it has an RPG-esque element built in the custom story. You can sleep in the bed and time will pass. You can talk to employers and Alma. Some decisions will alter the outcome of the story. Certain quests are only available during day or night, and there is also a morality system based on your actions. The character development is good in this custom story, as you know the motives of Lee, the past of Alma, and the story around the people who are the Crusaders. But in this story, you will only know more about the Crusaders than, for example, of Lee or Alma. The custom story has 3 endings, which are based on your morality points, which are all satisfying to an extent. The good ending is the best, of course. However, the only negative thing about this custom story is that it's extremely difficult to achieve the good ending. I tried it multiple times with all my might and didn't manage to achieve it, and there is no guide or walkthrough included. Number 2. Destiny Rebellion and Destiny Revenant, made by Karna. The stories told in Destiny Rebellion and Destiny Revenant are connected. Destiny Rebellion is the first pact, and Destiny Revenant is the sequel. In Destiny Rebellion, you play as Ralph Ziffer, a German scientist who lost his wife in a train accident. Determined to bring his wife back, he finishes a time machine that he wants to use to stop his wife from going on that train. But what really happens is that he opens up a complete paradox. Meanwhile, in the distant future, the grunt named Lazar is really curious about the human race that once existed before them. He snoops around the forbidden areas and finally stumbles upon the time machine that Ralph made 1,000 years ago. With this time machine, Lazar thinks he can go back in time and meet some humans. But only he also triggers the paradox. Both Ralph and Lazar find themselves in another dimension of the time god. In this custom story you'll find out why both of them ended up in this realm and not in the past, and who this time god is. In Destiny Revenant, you play as a troubled teenager called Janice Rivers, who is in a psychiatric hospital for his recurring nightmares and insomnia. However, the doctor forces him to go through a portal, which brings him to some futuristic sci-fi place. Janus Rivers finds out that he is some sort of spaceship in space, but he is determined to find a way back to Earth. Eventually he finds some sort of alien technology, which he uses, and the portal back to Earth next to it. But meanwhile, Lazar, who is now the time god, notices a disturbance. All beings are governed by his will and time, all but one. He sets out to find this individual. What he finds is that there is an evil entity called the Spectre, who is out to kill Lazar. He also can corrupt and spawn entities. Lazar and Janus both learn that it is that Janus is not governed by Lazar, but Lazar does not see Janus as a threat per se. The Spectre made it clear that Lazar that he is the threat instead of Janus. Janus learned this from an entity that appears before him a couple of times. They also learn that Janus is in some way connected to Ralph Siver. With the alien device, Janus travels through dimensions to find out the truth. This is in my opinion the most original and creative story ever made in Amnesia. I really like how the developer has woven the story throughout these custom stories, and that is really long. There are a multitude of plot holes that you must uncover throughout these custom stories. This custom story made it to this spot on this spot due to the fact that it is such a unique custom story and just a beautiful custom story overall with many unique environments. And you have multiple main and secondary characters woven into the plot. It also has a little bit of an RPG-esque feeling, but less than in Final Revelations. There's also less decision making in this custom story, only if you want to do optional stuff or not. It has one ending, but some extra contact if you collected enough trophies. The only negative thing about this custom story is that in my opinion, the evil guy, the Spectre, is kinda rushed and out of place in the custom story. You really do not learn a lot about this guy, and at the end, you quickly learn his motives. Number 1. The Maze of Lost Memories and The Woods of Lost Memories, made by XDJ 5000. First of all, I want to thank XDJ for his contribution towards the summary of the storyline in the custom stories. His summary goes as follows. Jack is the unseen protagonist of The Maze of Lost Memories and The Woods of Lost Memories. In the first custom story, the player controls him as he progresses through the maze, and he discovers by notes his obsessions. Jack was born in the 19th century from a quite rich family who lived in a small village situated in the mountains inside of the woods. His mansion was the largest in the whole family, mostly thanks to Jack's grandfather, Thomas, who was an archaeologist, thanks to the multiple relics that he found and sold. He was also very attached to the Catholic religion. Instead, Jack's father was a talented musician, who was rarely at home because of all the spectacles he had to participate. For unknown reasons, Jack's parents died when Jack and his brother were just kids. From that on, Jack and his brother lived with their grandfather. When Jack was young, he started to develop different fears, such as fear of the dark. The relationship between Jack and his grandfather was stronger than the relationship between his brother and his grandfather, because his brother always hated to live with his grandfather, and he always thought that his methods were wrong. When Jack's parents died, Thomas suddenly stopped traveling and decided to keep studying his projects about the ancient relics at home. What Jack will discover later is that Thomas, not much earlier during his last journey in Algeria, he found a quite unique relic, the orb. What Thomas discovered after some research is that the orb causes madness to whoever touches it. Basically, he never told anyone about this event, except Jack. Before dying, he told Jack about the orb and about its power. But let's just get back to when Jack's parents died. After that event, Thomas was started to become unstable, for reasons we already explained. He started to experiment on dead bodies, while studying researches about the ancient orb. He was trying to make a creature who had to obey his orders, similar to a servant. Jack and his brother knew about this situation. Jack's brother knew that something was wrong, but never told anyone. Jack instead was charmed by his grandfather. Jack and his brother used to practice with fencing, and they were the most brilliant kids in the entire village. One day, when they were practicing, they met a young girl who was the same age and who immediately showed interest in fencing Jack, his brother, and his family. Not long after, Jack and even his brother had a crush for this girl, and for the reason they started to argue a lot and their relationship started to degenerate quickly. This girl started to come to Jack's house quite frequently to play inside the specific room of the house, but she never knew his grandfather because he was always locked inside the warehouse. One day, this girl asked to meet Jack's grandfather. Jack accepted and decided to invite her to his mansion and to let her inside the warehouse. That day was traumatic to her because she saw the creature and she got scared, and Jack couldn't forget the fear in her eyes and her cries. For a while, the girl didn't talk to Jack anymore, but one day she suddenly decided to talk to him and say sorry for having escaped from his house that day. That happened because Thomas, Jack's grandfather, talked to her, and he somehow convinced her that Jack's whole family has a curse. None of them can love until have known hatred. After this event, she started to become obsessed with this idea, but no one ever noticed that. She secretly started to become a huge psychopath project to make Jack fall in love with her. This could have happened because probably Thomas let her touch the orb as well. After some years, Thomas's sanity became very low until one day he was found dead with a lot of wounds inside his warehouse. Because of this event, people discovered the existence of the monster and they said that Thomas was killed by the monster. So they decided to execute it. From that moment on, Jack will always feel guilty for not being able to save his grandfather because he was too late and that he couldn't save the creature as well, that his grandfather created with hard work. Before dying, he told Jack about the orb and about his power, and he asked Jack to keep studying his orb projects. That's when Jack touched the orb for the first time. Then he started to drink a lot of wine and became an alcoholic. He started to forget things. And this is also a consequence of touching the orb. The orb, or the guardian of the orb, lowers the sanity over time and takes all memories. His fears started to take shape in reality, and he started to hear strange voices in his nightmares. A voice that was similar to his grandfather's voice. He started to see strange red slimes all around the reality that tortured his mind with his fears. He started to call those slimes nightmares. Instead, Jack's brothers decided to start a new life, to leave the house, and he left Jack alone. Over the years, Jack didn't leave his old mansion, and Jack asked his brother to participate in a duel of fencing, like old times. But he lied to him. He actually wanted to lure his brother back and take revenge on his brother because he left Jack alone. So what Jack's brother and the other people discovered that there is the existence of another dangerous and horrible creature who was created by Jack himself, following his grandfather's project. Of course, they executed even this new creature, and they searched the entire mansion for another one of those creatures. After that event, Jack's brother and the woman, that girl from the beginning of the story, who fell in love with Jack, decided to leave the village and stayed away from Jack. So that's when Jack's very solitude life started. Jack barricaded some doors and windows of his house, and he promised himself he would never ever leave the house again, and that the only friend who never left him alone was the strange voice, or the nightmare, or the guardian of the orb. But even in that deep solitude, there was still a person who always sent him letters, the woman. But Jack never really listened to her words. After 1 year, Jack's sanity was so low that he couldn't distinguish nightmare from reality. He could no more distinguish a sanity potion from wine, and he was starting to become tired of the whole situation. That's when he received a letter from his brother asking for help. At that moment, Jack drank his sanity potions, and his mind became clear for a few minutes. He decided to leave the house and search for his brother. He discovered later that his brother left some notes in his path. At the end, Jack found an old building where his brother should be locked up. What Jack didn't know is that it was all a trap made by the woman to lock Jack inside the old building too. inside the cells. Jack couldn't help his brother. She was already mutilating and torturing him. Basically, she made his brother what you call the suitor. After that, Jack pretended to drink the amnesia mixture and tried to escape from the building, but because of his low sanity and his fears, he failed. At the moment, she stunned him and decided to let the Maze of Memories therapy start. A therapy that she was working on for a long time. A therapy that, according to her calculations, should make Jack fall in love with her. She put the senseless Jack's body inside the strange machinery and started the therapy. What she realized after some hours is that Jack could no more wake up, even if he was still breathing. She understood that Jack was in a nightmare, but he could not escape from the state. She tried to turn off the machinery, to call Jack's name over and over. But in the end, she was incapable of waking Jack up. As you already noticed, these custom stories are heavily story-based, and has probably the longest stories ever created. The story itself is original and creative, however, Destiny Rebellion and Revenant are still the most unique. There are many plot holes in this custom story, and some are left to the player's imagination. What makes this story to be number one is the way it's told, which is almost like a real professional and is very psychological. It's really well written, how Jack recovers his memories through trials and tribulations. The way it's told is even more beautiful. The story is told often in mysterious and abstract ways, which makes the player really ponder on the story, and little by little you get to know more about who Jack is, who the secondary characters are in the story, and how they come into play with the situation Jack is in now. And also why Jack is in this situation, and if he can get redemption. The story unfolds itself through notes, flashbacks, and even interactive memories and decisions throughout the maze of lost memories and the woods of lost memories. The really satisfying multiple endings this cursed story has is also what made this cursed story so good, as it leaves the player thinking about the endings. It triggers the imagination of the player, so the player ponders still about the story for a while. This is a professional tactic for an ending that is used to inspire the audience, so the audience doesn't forget it so quickly. This custom story has really done well on all the points that are based on my decision and list, as discussed earlier. There's really nothing negative to be said about this custom storyline. And these were the best 3 custom story storylines. I hope you enjoyed it, and of course you can suggest the stories you have liked the most in the comments below. Cheers!